Hello and welcome to the Warp Shelf. I'm Frank Duran.
I'm Deshaun Vasquez.
And today we're talking about Superman. We're talking about our main boy. We're talking about
our other main boy.
Other main boy. Fair. Yeah, to be fair, Batman's our main guy, but of course.
Yeah.
Superman.
He's a main man, not to be confused with the actual main man. You know what
I mean? So, guys, if you haven't seen an episode we've done like this, we have another episode almost a year ago, or over a year ago now. We had how to get into Batman comics, and we've done how to get into
comics in general. Sort of turned it into like its own series.
How to get into something, and that's kind of what we're going to talk about today. Is this is kind of an episode for new fans, but also longtime fans, or people who just don't understand Superman, or feel like they don't get Superman, or like they're like, so what's the hype? I don't get why you like Superman. He's so generic. He's so the template, you know.
That is like, the first point.
Yes, that is the first point in this document that Sean made about how to get into comics. Is that is a lot of people when they talk about Superman are no longer impressed, sort of. He is the standard, you know, like he was the original. It's like, for a lot of reasons that he's the original. He's the fucking first real, like, superhero movie that went well, you know, like, is his movie. And it's like, the first, like, successful, like, superhero story in comics that actually stuck
around.
Comics.
Like, Action Comics, we forget, was an anthology when it first started out.
It
got to the point where, like, readers just kept demanding Superman stories. So it just became a Superman book.
I'm okay with that.
It got to a point where back in the old days, before it stopped being an anthology comic, they would literally have to put, like, a little featuring Superman at the top to tell people, like, this one will have Superman.
This one will have Superman. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. We're not hiding it from you. And I think it's funny because it's like, he's the original. He's the guy that, like, really started this craze of superheroes. But he's also kind of looked down on right now. It's kind of like the most basic of superheroes, like the template that all superheroes are made from. And I think that's important to know, is that, like, that they are kind of all made from him, you know, like, and it's like they come from and we talked about in past episodes the Mount Fuji of genres, you know, like, of like, you either have to acknowledge it or not acknowledge it in the genre when you're doing a piece about it. And often you have to confront what Superman is when you're making a superhero comic. And I feel like in recent years they've come to the conclusion that you can't do Superman, you have to do evil Superman, and we've gotten a lot of evil Superman.
That's the easiest, sort of laziest thing. We're afraid to write Superman, so whatever, just make him evil.
Yeah.
And it was cute years ago when, like, we would occasionally do evil Superman thing, and, like, Injustice turned it into a big thing. Now it's starting to get real old.
It's one of those things that you can... So I think one of the major things when we talk about Superman is how hard it is to write Superman. Because, of course, you already have this prejudice of, like, I don't want to read a Superman story. He's boring. He's the template, you know? Like, so, but, like, that's not really true, of course. He's so different than a lot of other heroes. And he will often have unique characteristics that, like, really make him stand out against the whole background of DC heroes.
So, as a result, it does make him more difficult to write.
Yes.
As far as, like... Even if you're just going by, say, the original 7 Justice League members, you could argue he's the toughest one to write for.
I kind of have to agree. It's hard, you know? Like, it's one of those things where if you had to ask me, I could probably come up with a Batman story really fast, you know, like really easily. I don't know if the top of my noggin I could put together a great Superman story.
I'd have to really think about it.
I'd have to really brainstorm it because... it's hard. There's lots of things that go along with writing Superman that make him hard. It's like you saw it in Justice League and Justice League Unlimited. They don't know how to write Superman into action pieces.
Yeah, they got better about it.
Yeah, they
later on,
got better.
But like the first season of Justice League specifically, like really struggled with it.
They just like shock Superman or take him out of the picture. Like they either take him out of the picture really fast or have him like or nerf him or take him and like they do something
which is
to
funny
not
because
get him involved.
It's funny because the DCAU had already nerfed Superman in his own show, so You didn't feel like he really needed to be nerfed any further.
It's kind of funny because it's one of those things where the immediate thought is that Superman can do anything, so he can solve any problem, and that's definitely the real thing. Is that like when you are doing like a we even talked about this in a short we did once, is that like, could Goku beat Superman? You know, like Superman versus every different character comes up often, and it's like, yeah, Superman would beat their ass. You know, like you're like Superman. If you're talking about a full powered, like unconditional Superman, would beat their ass.
Yeah,
but
the entire conceit is that he has like no limitations,
right? But he wouldn't. Like well-written Superman wouldn't run around and kick everybody's ass, you know, like, and you're just like, And I think that's what the important thing about this list here, you're not going to see a lot of evil Superman. You're going to see some clever uses of Superman that actually are like thought-provoking instead of just being like big action pieces, you know, because I think that Superman is inherently going to have great action pieces, but the best thing about Superman is what he can say about society through his actions. You know, he's a great set piece for sci-fi, for fantasy, for...
Yeah, he's a good paragon to, like, map a story around when you have something to say.
He's almost aesthetic.
Yeah.
You know, like, it's like, and that's kind of how they've treated him in recent media, is that when you're bringing in Superman, he's not really character, he's a setting, you know, like it's like there's a feeling when Superman's around, you know, like that, like, oh, he should be able to take care of that, you know, like,
yeah, just like, think about like even something as recent as like the Snyder cut, where like they treat versus the theatrical cut, where like they treat the return of Superman with like such reverence,
right? They're just like, here he comes, like you're like, instead of like Josh's what were we calling the Justice League we didn't cut? What were we calling it?
Oh, the Justice League.
Justice League. It's like they definitely were just like, and Superman's back and he solved the issue, you know, like instead of being like,
what's wrong with your lip? Don't worry about it.
The warp. Yeah, right. It's just like, wait, hold on, and it's like, of course, the reverence of the black suit and then like him just like stopping it, you know, like is a lot more fun than what they did in the Justice League. But you're just like, hey, but beside the point, that's not what we're trying to get into here. But it's like it's what we're trying to say is it's hard to write Superman, and the best ones know how to handle him, you know, instead of just being like, oh, take out Superman so that way we don't have to solve the problem like that. You know, like, you're just like, wait, hold on.
Which tends to show, like, in the actual comics that they never really throw just anyone on Superman 9 times out of 10. It usually has to be someone who's, like, been in the game for a little while. Yeah. That has somewhat of a reputation to, like, really tackle it. Which is why it, like, didn't surprise me at all that, like, when Bendis moved from Marvel to DC, they're like, give him Superman.
Like, Superman. Give him Superman. It's all, I feel like it's almost more of a challenge for writers. You know, like, I feel like Bendis, it's like, yeah, of course, I can write a relatable Spider-Man comic. You know, I can make Ultimate Comics.
I can do Daredevil. I can do everything.
It's like, yeah, I can do Civil War. It's like, there's all these things, but then, like, going to Superman and making him not only relatable, but, like, it's human.
It's a tough one.
It's hard.
I've read the first few volumes of Bendis's run on Superman, and I have mixed feelings about it. I think he really knows how to write Clark, especially when he gets into his head, because, you know, comics have their own little, like, thought, like, boxes and stuff like that. Yeah. He really knows how to get into Clark's head and actually portray what his thoughts would be. I think he nails that. As far as, and he also has, like, creative premises, but I don't feel like they always feel kind of undercooked. Yeah. This is just me based on reading, like, the first 3. Yeah. So they're like, there's something here, but it's a little rough.
It's hard. So, and I think that's why this episode is so important for us to do, is that a lot of people don't like Superman because he is kind of a fix-all. And so they need these stories where he's able to actually work within his own story, you know, like actually do things. And I do feel like some of the stereotypes about Superman do come from the best Superman media. The best Superman media, these two bad fucking boys right here, are the most famous Superman stuff out there. I would say it's like Man of Steel may have sold more tickets or made more money nowadays, but these were the money makers back in the day. These set records.
And it's funny because even Superman 78 in its own way, like, nerfed Superman a lot.
Yeah.
Like, when Superman
Until
the
he
movie
can
came
reverse
out,
time
this was
and-
before
but you're like,
Crisis. This was 76. This was a decade before Crisis on Infinite Earths came out. So this was, like, old school, pre-Crisis.
Yep.
We will make up whatever power we want for Superman. Like, I will sneeze and he will destroy a universe.
Right. You're like, wait a minute.
Superman can turn into a bug creature. And you're like, okay.
Yeah, right.
He's Superman. He can just do that.
It's true though. They like the golden age of Superman comics. That's why we're not going to recommend any really golden age stuff. Is that like Batman stories back then? They kind of just did whatever they want.
Yeah.
You know, like and not in a bad way. It's definitely a lot of fun, and like I get what they were going for back in the day, but it's definitely one of those things where you're just like, oh Lord, what did he do? You know, like you're like what superpower does he have now? Which I do like. I think that's always fun, is revealing like a new way for Superman to use his powers. But of course, the Golden Age was very like.
And that's also like, you know,
whatever.
Comics are disposable entertainment. This is just escapist stuff. So like, whatever, he can have whatever power he wants because he's Superman.
Who cares? Like,
yeah. So Superman 78 had sort of a task ahead of it back when it was being made.
Yeah.
That was very difficult. I'd compared it when I wrote my Wonder Woman review way back when, that it's tough to reconcile what Superman actually is or what he could be versus what the public perception of Superman is, because there is often a disconnect there.
Huge disconnect.
There's like the icon Superman, and then there are the people who actually read the comics and know what Superman is.
Yeah, and I feel like like sometimes it's these two movies that made that iconic, different Superman. It's the same way with some people only view Batman as the silly, goofy Adam West Batman instead of the multifaceted character he is.
On the idea that like people only accept like Kevin Conroy DCAU Batman and don't like anything else.
Yeah, and you're like, wait, hold on,
relax.
Hold on, relax. I mean, you're right, he's good, but like, come on, like let's go to other things. I do love these movies. No question.
I specifically really like the Donner cut of Superman too.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think you, of course, give all the control to Donner, and that's how you win.
It gets rid of like the weirder stuff, like Superman pulling the S off his chest and it turning into like a net and stuff like that.
You're like, what the fuck was that? You're like, that's definitely the perception that goes around after these movies, that like kind of Superman can do whatever he wants, and like. And you know, and kind of, you know, can and will do whatever he wants, you know, and you're kind of like, what?
But yeah, the thing about Superman 78 was that I argue, because I've talked to people about like, what's the best origin story put to film?
Yeah.
And I usually argue Superman 78 because not only is it like a great Superman origin that is like yet to be topped in the public perception, but it's also kind of the origin of like the superhero film in general, where like we really started to actually take these seriously. Because before that, you might get the occasional like black and white serial and stuff like that. But like the birth of like the superhero film as we know it today starts with Superman 78.
Yeah, definitely. Because it's like Batman 66 was not doing the same thing, you know, like they may be viewed the same, but they're not the same thing.
They're really not.
Like, because it's like, Batman 66 is like slapstick, you know, like, and this is definitely like big budget movie.
Yeah, you want to talk about like reverence? There's a lot of reverence in especially the first one.
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely like, and I feel like the first one is two's great. Two's great because of course Zod, but it is that, and of course, you know, we already talked about Terrence Stamp in
our Last Night in Soho
episode. He's absolutely fantastic as Zod here. And I'm not like, please do not think I'm being like Superman too bad, because it's fun. It's great.
Even the theatrical cut is fun and silly.
You're like okay, but this one feels like it understood Superman at the time. You know, like it's Superman. I think changes with the time, and that's what's the great things about Superman, is that he does update with the times. You know, a lot of people call him old school, and you're like, have you read New Superman? You know, like you're like, wait a fucking minute, it's not like that. You know, like, but this loved that,
and it's just one of those things where like 76 was important not only because, you know, birth of the comic book film, like I had said, but it also changed the comics going forward. Like they basically like That's how we got like Crisis on Infinite Earths. We start to like really dial him back and make him more grounded like he was in these movies. He didn't have every power in the world. He had a select power set, a particular personality, a certain aesthetic. Like, think about how long the Fortress of Solitude having the crystal look lasted. Stuff like that.
That wasn't in the comics.
Yeah, or just the even mere thing that like Zod wasn't really a character or like an arch nemesis in the comics at that point.
They literally kill him. They literally kill him in the comics several times, actually.
Yeah, a few times.
That's why we'll fucking talk about one of my favorite movies. But we will. It's one of those things where it's just like they killed Zod so many times.
Superman never kills except for all the times he has.
And like literally, Zod is like he literally goes on like a war crime trial and like executes him. You know, like, and
that's not till John Byrne's run though. But pre like Superman 78, Zod was a minor character at best. He wasn't like the great Kryptonian like arch nemesis General Zod until Superman 2. Then we made him that retroactively in the comics.
I think that's another thing that is extremely hard to write with Superman is who does he fight? You know, like who is his villains? You know, like that's always the hard issue. Of course, you have Lex Luthor, the big bad. And he's the real nemesis.
And that's the great polar opposite of just like strength versus intellect, and you have like the moral quandaries between the two.
You're like, oh, nice.
So like that's why he makes sense as like the main big bad for Superman.
Right.
But then as far as like just a physical power set, you have other Kryptonians and aliens for him to fight. You have villains like Parasite who can just sap his power. So they find a way around it.
Yeah, exactly. And it's one of those things that I do feel like that's one of the major problems with modern Superman is a lot of people don't know how to write the villains for him, you know, like because a lot of now is just like Brainiac beat Superman, you know, like Brainiac did it, you know, like, which of course Brainiac's one of like the ones that went from a small villain to being like a gigantic like threat, you know, all the time.
I mean,
like
Brainiac's my personal favorite, and I feel cheated that we haven't done him in movie form yet.
I mean, the animated movie. There's several animated
talking
movies.
about live action movies,
I know,
Frank.
But you know, they got him several times in the animated movies, so you're like, all right, not bad. And they really do some of these stories that we have stacked here. But basically, it's sometimes I say, even though I love these movies, they're a little damaging. In the idea of the public Superman, they're a little damaging.
We've talked about before, especially whenever Star Wars comes out, about like something being too iconic for its own good. So it's not
where it's
allowed.
like Mark Hamill can't work in anything else.
So it's like
voice acting.
So it's one of those things where like it's not allowed to evolve. And shift with the times because it's constantly like beheld to like this one ideal, which is just one iteration.
Which of course is the main issue I think a lot of people have with this movie is that Man of Steel, and I was talking about this today, is that the problem with iconic franchises is that Disney owns it, Warner Brothers owns it, but in reality, after we've seen it, after we've ingested it, after we kind of take it in, we make it our own. We apply it to ourselves. You know, like, and, you know, I will often say, we said at the beginning of this episode, my boy, our guy, Superman, is like, we, as fanboys, as fans of a product, you usually will take something and make it your own. And that's usually the problem with trying to update or change it.
Because then you run into like, that's not mine. That's not what I want.
Now, it comes up often when we're talking about Star Wars is like people being like, that's not my Star Wars. But it was such a fucking thing when Man of Steel came out that like, we have many podcasts about it.
It's so funny that like Superman Returns and Man of Steel are both two extremes on the opposite end of the spectrum, where it's like Superman Returns tried too hard to recapture the spirit of the Donner films, and then Man of Steel arguably tries too hard to go against that and try to be something new. And I feel like the way to go, and I feel like the way to go next time is probably to just kind of find a happy medium between the two.
Yeah.
But I also get the conceit of Man of Steel, just trying to at last separate ourselves from the Donner films, because it's just one of those things where like, as good as the Donner films are, it's just like, can we move on?
Can we push forward?
Yeah.
Now, I said that literally all the time people would be like, my Superman doesn't kill, and I'm like, you don't know Superman then. You know, like, it's one of those things where it's like people were like, oh, my Batman doesn't kill when they were talking about Dark Knight, and I'm like, yeah, he does. constantly. Like even the Joker, you know, like where they'll be like, he never kills the Joker, and you're like, hey, Mash, what story?
I mean, it depends on what story you're reading. Sometimes it's Elseworld, sometimes it's actually in mainstream continuity, but then they just retcon it later.
Talking about somebody who kills Joker, this bad boy right here.
Like, and it's just one of those things where, like, even if you're like, oh, that's not my ideal of Superman, Christopher Reeves would never. I'm like, I mean,
yeah,
he kills Zod in Superman too.
Yeah, he's fucking dead, guys. He does. He's not snapping his neck exactly.
And don't give me that shit with the Arctic Police. That was a reshoot that was added after the fact, and that only came up in like TV edits of the film, where it's just like Zod wasn't dead. They were arrested by the police.
You're like, wait, what?
The Arctic Police. You're like, huh?
And then they put him in the Phantom Zone, the rest of them.
Yeah.
It's like, what? Oh, what?
And then, like, what's the alternative? Oh, I just put them in the Phantom Zone. It's like, oh, so you trapped them in, like,
a forever hell?
Like a purgatory universe?
Purgatory universe? Yeah. Which I've always... I think that's something that I need to bring up when I'm talking about Superman, is that often the problem with Superman is it brings up... It's like the problem with power is that it can... corrupt absolutely. No, I'm just kidding. Is that like power can lead to, especially when you start exerting it over other people, fascism. Fascists. And like, and often, I know some people make like jokes about Batman being super cop, but this is the real super cop right here. You know, like the real, like, overblown force against nothing.
There's always the arguments of like how much is too much for Superman overextending his power upon beings. Like the idea that he can sentence someone to the Phantom Zone
you're like,
is interesting.
Whoa.
It's arguable, but it's usually
but
he's usually reserved for like Kryptonians. Like, well, that's a Kryptonian thing.
They take care of their own shit.
That's kind of their problem, I guess. But then when you think about other villains, especially depending on how the Phantom Zone is portrayed, sometimes it's like, oh, it's kind of like you're isekai'd into a savage world. Sometimes it's like you exist in a state where you're not truly alive. It's like a purgatory. You're like, fuck.
Yeah, there's one where they literally say you were burst into a million pieces, and then Zod like reassembles himself in the fucking Phantom Zone, and you're just like, fuck, dude. You're like, that sounds awful. Like,
so it's just like, one of those things, and some great stories like explore what it means to like overreach. Like, I think like my first instinct is Doomsday Clock.
Yeah, where he's like, should I get rid of all the weapons? You know, like,
or the fact that like, should I intervene in this political issue in a foreign country that's not the U.S.?
I will give credit. I don't give a lot of credit to Batman vs Superman, but I will give credit to them to being like, should Superman step in terrorist matters? You know, like you're just like. You're like, or does it lead to more terrorism? You know, like you're like, I do that. You're like, you're like, I don't know. Like,
kind of a touchy subject. Kind of weird.
But that's kind of the fun, is that like Star Trek uses space and aliens to tell their moral stories. They're like they're what they're trying, you know, like what they're trying to get across, and they'll use Superman to do very similar things. Like I said, he's a setting, you know, like sometimes he's just the setting piece and the story's taking place on top of Superman, you know, like, and you're just like, okay. And then there's other stories like Man of Steel where you're like, no, this Superman story, nothing else happened. Superman stuff happened. That's it. You know, because that's really, I will say, it's like Superman, the movie, and Superman 2 are very much like Superman trying to fit in with humanity a lot, and this is very, and they're like very Superman dealing with Superman shit.
Superman 78 is very open about the fact that it's a comic book movie. The fact that the entire narrative is framed with the curtain opening and a little girl opening an issue of Action Comics, and it goes into the comic and becomes the movie. Just like, that's about as literal as you can get.
Yeah, literally.
Whereas like Man of Steel is sort of a more realistic take, where they're just like, we're telling Superman as a first contact story.
Yeah, which I it's a great idea.
It makes sense.
It makes sense. It's one of the things that will be explored in some of the great stories that we mentioned here, is that like, I think one of the most important parts of Superman, and I think that you have to bring it up when you talk about him, is he's the biggest immigrant in media. You know, like if we're talking about, because a lot of people are like, Superman America, because of course the red, and he's always like taking care of America.
Truth, justice, in the American way.
Yeah. But in reality, but no, not in reality. It's very American to be an immigrant and trying to make your country, your place, may it be Metropolis or anywhere else, better.
Yeah.
You know, because and he works hard to try to be a better person. And like that can be the hard thing here is like sometimes the old stories are really offensive in the way they handle his immigration. They're like, don't worry, he's here, but he puts in hard work. And it's like, it keeps that like narrative of like immigrants don't work hard, but like Superman does, don't worry, you know, like, so it's like, there's definitely some old Superman stories where you're like, the fuck are you saying?
Yeah.
You know, like,
but you can also tell that like perspective of like Siegel and Schuster, who were both two Jewish kids, moving to America and trying to tell that sort of like immigration story.
Yeah. And I think it's an actual like important part about him is that he is a transient person, you know, like it's not like, I don't know, Batman's Gotham's boy, you know, born there, bred there, like fucking gonna die there. You know? Like, it's like Superman is from somewhere else and he wants to make his current situation
but he was raised as a human being.
Yeah, right.
So there's sort of like that disconnect. It's like, well, he knows nothing else,
right? You're just like, and I think that's the other. It's not only an immigrant story; it's a refugee story too. It's like I think that's another very important part about this. Is it's not just like I wanted to move to America for a better life. It's
literally my planet blew up and I had nowhere else to go.
It's literally like it's
and I
so many refugee
and I was
stories.
sent to a planet where I know I could literally survive because of Earth's climate and yellow sun. I could actually thrive.
If you didn't know, Superman's very left-leaning. Like, if that wasn't apparent, if you're like, keep your politics out of my Superman, you didn't read any Superman and you didn't understand it. Because all the time they're pushing a political message with Superman in a usually great way.
Even it's funny that like Superman 78 is considered like, especially by today's standards, so like cheesy.
Yeah.
Because even as far back as 1978, the idea of like truth, justice, and the American way is scoffed at in the movie.
Yeah.
He says the lines like, I'm here to fight for truth, justice, and the American way. And Lois just laughs and says, you're just going to fight every politician in this country. So the fact that even as far back as 1978, they were kind of like...
Yeah, right? They're like, oh, come on. You know,
which is why, and we'll bring it up later, there's a literal story called What's So Funny About Truth, Justice, and the American Way.
Right? You're like, oh, shit. Now, we didn't bring up how we were introduced to Superman. I would say my first introduction to Superman is, of course, probably a toy. Probably a toy from the animated series. Like, because I had all the Batman toys. I was definitely watching all the Batman the animated series.
Yeah.
And Superman was afterward to continue
I would
on.
probably say like cartoons and toys and just general pop culture in this. It's not like a thing like Batman where I can easily narrow it down to like it was
this is that
it
moment.
was Batman 89. It was the first Tim Burton film. It's the earliest movie I remember watching.
It's what, for me, it's like Batman, the animated series I've been watching as like one of my earliest memories, you know, like, and it's just like, of course, that's like, yep, that's where it started, you know, like Superman is very much like, all of a sudden I was like, I remember, you know, I had a Superman toy, you know, like, it's just like one of those things where he's part of the culture, you know, like, and it's like, I like that you know, that's the way he was brought in, you know, like, it's just like, hey, we're continuing this Superman thing. But it's like, it's one of those things that I was introduced to, you know, we were saying like a very nerf Superman, you know, like a very like Superman comes in, but he gets his ass handed to him. And you're like, wait, what?
Even though it's unofficial, like a new weakness in his own animated series might as well be electricity. He can't breathe in space. He like needs his own special suit for it.
Which of course is just for the toys.
He's very super strong, but he's not as strong. He's not.
I remember that spacesuit toy though.
So do I.
That toy, so good.
He's never as strong. He's not as fast. Like he can fly, but he doesn't fly. He's not like Sonic booming everywhere. Yeah. So it's just like little stuff.
And I think it's funny how often they do have to like nerf him to make the fight something, you know, like, and you're just like, let's see a full out fight. And I think that's probably why I always will love Man of Steel is it's like, it was really like, what would happen if two Supermen really fucking went at it? You know, like, and you're like, oh shit.
It was also sort of a breath of fresh air because it was sort of at a point where like we hadn't seen Superman punch anything since like Superman 2.
Seriously.
So it was sort of like retroactively making up for all the lost time for action in the past 3 Superman movies and just doing it all at once.
Yeah, I think a lot of times Superman is shoved into this like pacifist form that he like can't act because he's too powerful. You know, like it's like he shouldn't throw a punch because he will kill somebody.
Yeah.
And it's like that's what I think is the fun of Man of Steel is like a young Superman that doesn't fully fucking get that he's wrecking everything, you know, like, and you're just like, oh, dang.
Like, oh, I literally just put the costume on yesterday. Now I'm stuck to be in charge of like stopping an alien invasion from my own people.
You're like, oh shit.
Got a first day on the job.
Yeah, first day on the job. Which you know is how it goes. So let's next up on your list here is to talk about what do you like most about the character. And like
it's an interesting I think it's
up.
an interesting thing to bring up just because like our number 1 is Batman and Superman's literally the polar opposite.
And that's the point.
And
know?
that's
like,
that's
different.
sort of the thing. Like what I find, it's one of those things where like I kind of have both. Like it's nice to have like the grim, the darkness,
vigilante.
Just like my this is my curse, blah, 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 blah. But then it's also refreshing to just have the polar opposite of just boundless optimism and hope.
Yeah, and I think that's my favorite part of Superman is definitely the optimism. You know, like I know that's weird to say, but like he believes in so many things.
Just the simple idea, of like this essentially messianic type figure.
Yeah.
Who's just as human as you and me, despite how powerful he is. Like my favorite Superman moments tend to be all the cute little domestic moments he has.
Right.
Like in Superman Wonder Woman, back when they were making him and Wonder Woman and thing in the New 52.
Yeah.
Like my favorite bit is that they go out on their first date and he takes her to go get pancakes at a diner. And
right.
you're like, that's adorable. That's
adorable.
really Superman. Or the fact that like in the Christmas episode of Justice League,
I was about to say he believes in Santa.
He actually believes in Santa Claus.
He's like, he's real, right? And you're just like
you mean Santa wrapped the presents.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's so funny. You're like, oh, all right.
Because at the end of the day, like, yeah, he's powerful, but he's still like this country boy.
I also think one of the most fun of Superman is the flex of Superman. You know, like, because he's so powerful. He's so, there's so many things that sometimes, Batman will be like, he snuck. There's this one scene in the recent runs where he sneaks into Clark's childhood home and he's like, did you really think you snuck in here, Batman? Like, I let you in here. If I would have thrown you out of here the minute I would have like fucking ripped you off the fucking place if I knew you.
Yeah.
If I really wanted you gone, and that's kind of like the real fun of Superman is like that the man is good and he's not afraid to be like, I could fucking lift this boat.
I feel like writers are afraid to play with that a lot of the time. Like, I feel like this is something that, like, Bruce Timm and company figured out pretty early on, that it's okay for Superman to be a little coy sometimes and just be a little playful with the way he fucks with people. I think that's
one of my favorite, like, Superman, Batman media in general is, of course, the almost crossover episode in the animated series. They made it a movie.
It's a 3-parter in Superman the animated series. It's a 3-parter,
but
then they packaged it as a movie afterward.
But it's one of my favorite pieces of Batman and Superman media because it plays into both characters so well, and Superman gets to be this like coy James Bondish type in a little way. Yeah. And I also love Batman hitting on Lois Lane. That's the
funniest thing in the world, that like Bruce Wayne comes to Metropolis and the first thing he does is start to hit on Superman's girl.
Shit.
Bruce putting his dick on the table immediately. He's just like, all right, I'm in Metropolis and now this shit's mine now.
It's amazing. It's incredible. I love that those 3 episodes are some of my favorite.
But even
Superman
like
media.
Little stuff, like that one bit where Lois is just like, how do you keep getting all these stories, Clark? Is like, well, it's because, Lois, I'm actually Superman, and I use my powers to just get ahead of you and steal all your bylines. You're just like, you're a sick man. He's just like, I mean, you asked. Just like, I like Superman be kind of a playful dickhead sometimes. Yeah. It's okay. Yeah.
And definitely they've played with Superman just being a dick. We'll talk about a few of these in here. There's a couple of them where he is learning, he's not exactly there yet. I think that can always be a good like coming of age story. I think they can do some like coming of age with Superman. I think that's another important part of the Superman story is not it's not that he's an alien. It's not that he's an immigrant most of the time. It's how he was raised. You know, like it's not nature. It's that big, like, always question of nature versus nurture. And Man of Steel really leans into it where they're like, your nature is to come and conquer this fucking planet. And he's like,
yeah.
No.
And even what Elseworlds Tales, like we'll get to later with Red Sun.
Yep.
Just the idea of like, well, if you landed literally anywhere else, this could have turned out much better, much worse.
Different. And I think it's very interesting, the different like tenets of Superman's character, you know, like of this like peace loving, you know, like but also fish out of water story. It's very interesting. That's the thing, is like a lot of people think Superman's one note, and we just gave you like 5 layers of what Superman is, exactly. You know, like and stuff that you can explore. So I think we should kind of go into first off your accessible standalones.
Yes.
These and I'm pretty sure Deshaun put this at the top of the list because,
well, this is just an alphabetical order.
Yes.
It just also conveniently happened to be at the top of the list because it's the GOAT.
But no, I mean, like in a way of doing standalones, I think that's an important thing to do when we're talking about Superman, because
some of the best stories about Superman are standalones. That's the interesting thing.
It's not like Batman sometimes where it's like, oh yes, no, you got to read that whole run.
Yeah, read this whole run to get it. Same thing with like Spider-Man. It's like, oh, you got to read this stuff from the 90s. Oh, read Bendis' entire Ultimate Spider-Man run. Here, it's just like a lot of those best stories are like usually outside of continuity, so they're not constrained by like universe shit.
Yeah, and they can kind of
just do whatever they want. Yeah,
I think that's actually sort of important in telling a great Superman story, is kind of doing whatever you want with it, you know, instead of being like continuity canon. It's like, no, let's do Superman in our own way, you know, like, and you're going to see a couple of these here. Of course, the GOAT. Yeah. Deshaun already said it. The fucking GOAT upon goats.
Yeah. Probably my favorite comic, period.
Yeah. I would say when I'm talking about like, we already did it in how to get into comics. I think we already talked about this one. We're not going to go too deep on it, but it's one of those things where when I talk about the greatest comics ever, it's like Watchmen, Dark Knight Returns, and All-Star Superman, you know? And I know Alan Moore's over there being like, you forgot about this bitch. But it's Alan Moore being like, I'm on all 3 of those.
It's still good to summate it anyway, because I'm sure people will only be watching this episode.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is that like All-Star Superman is such a great Death of Superman story.
Yes. Much better than the actual Death of Superman story.
You'll see there's no I have Death of Superman on the shelf back there. It's not in this stack for a very good reason. Okay, I think I have to talk about this. Is that Death of Superman is probably the most famous Superman story.
Yeah.
It's probably the most famous. It's the one that's been retold the most. 2 or 3 animated movies have done it. Literally just Doomsday coming down and killing him.
Yeah, Superman Doomsday did it. Then they actually did like a 2-part Death and Return of Superman thing. Made it a 2-parter like they did for Dark Knight Returns.
I like the second part.
Like,
I like the second
we told a very, 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 very condensed version of it in BVS. So you're like, people love Death and Return of Superman shit.
And it's one of those things that like, it's the reason why I'm not BVS is kind of a mess. It's it's all over the place, and definitely trying to like shove Dark Knight and Death of Superman in this is like, you're like, but and of course also everything else that was going on in Batman vs Superman, you're just like, oh geez, also Wonder Woman, you know, like, you're like, wait a minute, and not saying that like you can't handle all those things at once. That story just did.
Yeah. To be fair, it was at least able to like hold itself together, as we saw how that paid off for the most part.
But mostly what I'm saying is that like the Death of Superman is not exactly an exciting story. It's just fun because you killed the unkillable man. Yeah. You know, and that's what comes up a lot in when you talk about Superman media, is like killing of Superman, because it's like, oh man, wow, he's dead. You know, you didn't think he could die, but then he dies.
Yeah, but the way we approach it in All-Star has much more nuance. Because as opposed to Death of Superman, which just boiled down to like, you know, he punched me to death.
Yeah.
Man, we're going to sell a shitload of single issues for this one. It's more just like it's outside of the universe, so it doesn't have to worry about continuity. You can actually stick with the deaf and not have to bring them back later in a year.
Yep.
And it's the idea of like, what does a person like Superman leave to the world when he is gone?
Yeah.
And how does he face that?
It's an extremely deep story, extremely nuanced. Grant Morrison is full of detail.
And he approaches this iteration of Superman like he does with his Batman run, where he comes to that old school comic book mentality where he's like, everything is beautiful and everything counts.
Yes.
This has so much like a bit of modern Superman flavor. This has a lot of Silver Age nonsense.
It's got Bizarro. It's got Superboy. It's got everything. It really doesn't hold back in any sense of the word. They even do Superwoman, which is like a huge golden age era.
Yeah.
Like Lois Lane becoming Superwoman. You're like, whoa. You're like, holy shit. The thing I think I will say about this book and the movie, the animated movie's quite good.
Yeah, it's pretty good. It suffers from being too short, so they had to like cut out chapters.
Yeah, and this is better as a complete.
Now that they're doing 2-parters, I would love to see them tackle that again.
Right? You're like, come on, go back.
Yeah.
Get back.
You already did it for Superman Doomsday, so it wouldn't be like it's unprecedented.
Wouldn't be fucking crazy. But the thing I will say about this is that this is a huge love letter to like longtime Superman fans, but is also a fantastic introduction to the character if you don't know anything about Superman. If your thought is that no one could beat Superman, this is literally like story of Superman just losing most of the time, or trying, to do something different. And I think that that's really refreshing in this. And of course, the number one thing about this is, of course, the Grant Morrison art is fantastic, but Frank Quitely. Oh my goodness. It's like he's got this cartoony look to it, but so detailed. It's fantastic.
I just love the design for Superman in this book. How he's just like, he has that real like sort of barrel-chested, top-heavy look. It's so classic, but he's not like overly ripped.
Yeah.
And I like the subtle differences between the way he looks like as Superman versus Clark, where he's just kind of hunched over a little bit, so his like chin kind of flattens, almost gives him like a double chin look. It's so subtle, and it's one of those things where like you can only pull off in this medium.
Yeah, it's really impressive. And
the fact that like there's just so many beautiful moments.
Yes.
In this, like you have like the chapter where Pa Kent dies, the way it's done, which is probably my biggest problem with like what they cut out in the animated film. And the fact that like Lex is ultimately defeated by an existential quandary of empathy.
You're like,
the idea that he gets to see the world as Superman does for a second, and it just breaks him.
Yeah, you're like, ooh. It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's incredible. And that's the thing. It's like, it's not just, and I know this might sound conceited, but it's not just a comic book story. This is deep. This is like I say with Watchmen or even Dark Knight Returns, this is like novel. Like deep, like where it's like it's got layers upon layers upon layers of what's trying to say, and I always get something new from rereading All Star Superman.
Yeah,
it's one of the great rereadable comics.
It's usually the easiest one for people when I hear them talk crap about Superman or say they don't understand Superman.
You're like, here, take this.
I'm literally like in the background, like about to bonk them with this, like, shut up, here you go.
Doge bonk, just bam.
Yeah.
Bonk. It's seriously though, I think that that's the reason why we're bringing this up first, other than the movies, of course, is that like, if you want to change your mind about Superman, if you haven't read this will change your mind about Superman. This will make you be like, do I give a shit about Superman? And you'll be like, yes, I do. Yes, I do. I do care about Superman. It's one of those things where it'll be a fun sci-fi romp if you've never read Superman before, and for longtime Superman fans, it's a huge love letter. It's a huge like, look at who's back. Look what we're doing here. Look, they finally succeeded, like Bizarro succeeding in making Bizarro World, and like and it's
another chapter they cut out of the movie, the Bizarro World
like,
stuff. You're like, man.
You're like, give me Bizarro. I also love the Bizarro chapter. That was one of those major losses because it's just so like, it's fantastic. Yeah. It's just like,
it's just so comic booky.
It's so comic booky, and it's one of those things where Bizarro is often just brought up as a joke,
or an excuse to have an evil Superman.
Yeah, that's really it. It's like often he's used as like a clumsy Superman, like, and of course, nowadays, a lot of the early ones, you're like, are you guys making fun of mentally retarded people? Like, what the fuck? Like, what the fuck? Like, what the fuck? Like, like, stop this, you know? Like, and definitely Grant Morrison adds a lot of weight to Bizarro here. It's like,
the fact that it's like an entire Bizarro planet, which is very like old school, like pre-crisis stuff. The fact that like there's a whole Bizarro world.
Yeah. You're like, wait a minute.
Yeah, and the idea that they have their own cultures and like appreciations of stuff.
It's funny. Sometimes like Grant Morrison was doing like the stuff that Rick and Morty makes fun of sometimes before like Rick and Morty was doing it, you know, like in that way where it's like they would like the Planet of Snakes is very similar to the Planet of Bizarro.
Yeah.
Like, you know, where it's like, oh yes, it works the same, but you know, like, and you're just like, basically what we're saying is this is a GOAT. The greatest of all time. Fucking get on it if you haven't read.
Like if you only had room to read one story, it'd be that one.
Yes. So next up on this list is For the Man Who Has Everything.
Yep. / whatever happened to the Man of Tomorrow, because they're both collected in this trade.
Another Death of Superman story, a little bit, you know, like it's like very
sort of like baits you into a Death of Superman story, which becomes more of like the retirement of Superman story.
Which you're like, all right. It's kind of, it's one of those things that Kurt Swan is absolutely one of the iconic
Superman artists,
and he fucking proves it all over this. It's just, it's so beautiful.
Yeah,
he's so fucking.
In a lot of ways, this is very much like a send off to like pre-crisis Superman.
Yeah, it's like, you know, there is of course Crisis, which is the huge like send off to that Superman, but this was really the end story if you wanted to like read it, you know, like this.
We've talked about before on like the previous 2 episodes about how there are many end of a particular character stories, even if they don't stick, because, you know, this is mainstream continuity a lot of the time, so it's not going to stick. We got to bring them back. But it's one of those things where like if you only had to focus on a certain run, you could think about this as a potential end if you didn't want to read anything else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? It's
just like I see the end of Jeff Johns' Green Lantern run as more or less the end of Green Lantern. Right. Even if other people will, of course, tackle it and bring their own stamp to it.
Now, did they do an animated movie of
They
this
did
story?
An episode of Justice League.
With this. I'm like, I know an animated version of this story happened.
Yeah. Which, fun fact, is the only adaptation of Alan Moore's work that he's actually liked.
Really?
To be fair, after League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, he just stopped watching any adaptations of his work. But
they didn't give a shit.
The only one,
like, as much as I love League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, they don't give a shit about adapting the comic at all. Yeah, you know, like,
but the only one that he actually had nice things to say about was that he really liked the Justice League episode that adapted For the Man Who Has Everything. Right?
You're like, wow. And really, I do say if you don't have to read that, you can watch that episode because they do a great job.
They do it pretty well. What you'll get in the book is like more time. So you'll get more stuff like how Kryptonian society works and stuff in this universe that Superman thinks he's in, where like Krypton survived. Yeah. So you get like cool stuff like that. More time spent there. So the only thing that the episode does is just kind of condense stuff to, you know, fit like a 22-minute runtime. Right.
And I mean, of course, that's the all-important part with the animation. Just like, fit it in 20 minutes, quick, go. Gotta fucking fly. It's the thing where if we're talking about Death of Superman, and a lot of people love that story, this is better.
You have 2 alternatives that are better.
2 alternatives that are better right then and there. You're just like, all right, there it is. Like, now I don't have this next one, but I have read a lot of it. Was Superman American Alien. It's the Max Landis written Superman comic, which was a big deal at the time before Max Landis' kind of accusations came out. Now I see a lot of people distancing themselves from Max Landis, which, you know, he might deserve it.
There's a back and forth. It's not as cut and dry as, say, like others, like other ones.
Yeah, or even with the Josh Whedon situation where you're like, oh, maybe it's not cut and dry, and then he comes out and he's like, no, I'm a bad person. You
just
remember I'm a bad person. You're like, ah, Jesus.
Just like, oh, what if I dug my own grave?
Yeah, seriously. That's that whole. I read that whole interview being like, shut up, dude. Shut up, dude. Like, you're like,
all you had to do was say nothing and you would have been fine.
I know. And then he fucking says all that shit. And you're
you
like,
waited.
Oh, you were an asshole.
You were silent for like 2 years, and this is what you decided to come out with.
Like, dude, come on.
Wow.
You're like, what the fuck?
But Superman American Alien is an interesting, like, differing take on Superman. It's another one that's outside of main continuity. It's trying to reinvent the wheel with its own version of Superman.
It's only 6 issues?
Just about, yeah.
6 issues, yeah.
And it's really fascinating. It's a very different take on Superman, but it's one of those ones where, like, it's one of the more modern takes that feels the most organic and believable, even if it takes liberties with the characters that I don't necessarily associate with Superman. I really appreciate the take.
Yeah, it's like it's
everything
makes Elseworld,
everything makes sense, even if I don't agree with it.
Yeah, I like that they lean into a lot of Superman stories. Lean into immigration. We've already talked about that, but of course, American Alien. When you say it like that, they're literally being like immigrant story, and they do. They really do play up that, and I think that that's super important. And why? And it's like you can shit on Max Landis, but the guy fucking loves Superman.
Yeah,
fucking so the man loves Superman, and it shows.
It's essentially a modern take on an origin story. That's as far as I would go with it. I do want to dial it back to whatever happened to the Man of Tomorrow and for the Man Who Was Everything, because I feel like we didn't really give a basis for what the actual stories were for it.
Yeah, go ahead.
So whatever happened to the Man of Tomorrow is essentially like a final Superman story where like all his villains come together and actually finally defeat him.
Yeah,
and the idea
which is
like,
funny because they do that in Batman too.
Yeah,
like, and you're just like
it's just the idea of like
that.
how he overcomes it and like potentially dies, but he also takes a life at the end of it and then effectively retires because of that to get rid of his power. So it's like a Superman retirement story. Like, what is the last story?
Yeah, right.
And for the Man Who Has Everything is contextualized by Batman and Superman coming to visit Superman on his birthday.
Yeah.
And the question is, what do we give to the man who has everything? And when they discover Superman, they found out that he's been like contracted by this like black orchid alien thing that's feeding him mental images of a life that he could have actually lived on Krypton.
Yeah.
With like a family and actually getting to know his Kryptonian parents and stuff like that. And the fact that like once he starts to realize that this world isn't real, the idea that he has to like give all of that up, including a son.
Yeah, you're like, ooh.
You're like, who doesn't actually exist.
It's basically, and of course, it's funny because I'm going to reference something that came afterward. It's Inner Light. It's Star Trek Next Generation's Inner Light. It's literally Patrick Stewart, Captain Picard living a whole life and then having to come out of it.
Yeah.
And like being like, oh shit, and of course so many people do that. I already brought up Rick and Morty. They're all referencing this, like all of them are referencing this. It's like that like story of like, and I mean, of course, It's a Wonderful Life is what they're all sort of, like
sort of a different situation.
Sort of a different situation, but
you could argue as far back as like Dickens with A Christmas Carol.
Yes.
The idea of like what could be.
What could be. Yeah, Dickens is the king of that, isn't
it?
Yeah. Like you're just like, fuck, Dickens fucking made that happen, dude. But okay, so next up, because we don't have American Alien, so I wish I could show you some panels of it. Next up is For All Seasons. Now, when I talk about my favorite Superman stories, I automatically talk about All-Star Superman, but I immediately bring up All Seasons.
Yeah, this tends to be the book that you and I agree with, that we will bring it up sooner than we would Birthright or Secret Origin.
Yes.
And I like Secret Origin a lot, and I like Birthright a lot.
Yeah.
But I've always leaned more towards this as like a good, solid, standalone Superman story for people to get into that also covers the origin too.
Yeah, that's really first off, my favorite part is Superman's tiny little face. That's my favorite part.
Oh yeah, I love the way Tim Sale draws Superman.
He's like, I'm fucking Superman.
I'm Superman. I'm very disappointed in you, Lex Luthor.
I don't know, like it even happens in the story. It's not just the cover. There he is. I'm very disappointed in you, Luthor.
How could you, Luthor? I trusted you. It's so funny. Everyone's made the joke. People said he looks like a thumb, which he kind of does.
Yeah, you're like,
but it's just super stylized. We love Tim Sale.
Yeah, no, Tim Sale's the king. Like there's a reason why Long Halloween and this are some of the best, and even Spider-Man Blue and Hulk Gray are some of the best stories ever by those characters. These guys are fucking
they're a
juggernauts.
Champion team.
They're fucking juggernauts. They fucking get shit done. They even have on the back here all the Jeff Loeb. They're like, oh yeah, you know, flexing on him.
Here's all the other stuff.
There's all the other stuff from DC. You're right. This is when I go to hand somebody a great like origin story for Superman, because we've been talking about deaths a lot. This is probably the one I want to give to people. You know, like I sometimes will be like, I'll bring in this bad boy if they want something a little more edgy. I'll bring in some Superman Earth 1 if they want some edge. This will piss off longtime fans because they'll be like, you changed things. And Superman's violent now, and you're like, shut up, like,
relax.
It's Earth 1, let it be, you know, like let it happen.
Superman literally predates you, and will be around when you're gone.
Seriously, we're dealing with an icon here, you know, like it's going to move.
What works about For All Seasons is that it's such a human story for Superman, despite it's just like, oh, I fought Lex Luthor, and I had to save Pa Kent from a tornado. It's just all human, very grounded stories, and a lot of it has Smallville stuff.
Yeah.
There's a lot of Smallville stuff in here.
A lot of Smallville. And I know you're a big Smallville guy because you love the show.
Yeah, I grew up watching the show.
I would say that's probably where I know you were introduced, but that's where like the love for Superman comes from. I feel like you were a big Smallville guy.
Yeah, I'm sure there even more so than me for people who are like still like it and don't recognize what its problems are. And I'm sort of at that stage where I'm like, it was important to me back then, but I understand like it walked so the CW shows could run into a wall.
Yeah, run right.
That's the way I put it.
That's a great way to put it.
But I'm sure there are plenty of people who got into Superman via that show and then maybe became comic book fans from that point forward.
So.
Yeah,
I hope so, because I hope they didn't just stick with Smallville.
And it's good to make like Smallville itself like feel like a character, because it's so important to Superman's formative years, and it's one of those things where we kind of breeze over it so much.
Yeah, it's like often just him landing in the field, and then moving on.
Cut to like adult. Maybe you'll get Pa Kent's death or something.
Yeah, or something with.
But
Lana,
that was also the conceit that made Smallville work for the most part. Unlike something like Gotham, where it was the story about Superman becoming Superman. It's essentially a Superboy show.
Yeah.
So you still sort of get to have your cake and eat it too. You're like, maybe he'll learn to fly this episode.
Yeah, it's not like the problem is, of course, I think you're talking about running into a wall. The show that tries to pull from Smallville and completely falls on its fucking face is Gotham. And I'm sorry, guys, to the people who are fans of Gotham, because I know there's a lot of you out there. Gotham's just a bad version of Smallville. Like,
it really is. And it's a bad version of Smallville and a bad version of Gotham Central. Just do a fucking Gotham Central show.
Just do HBO Max.
You can have your cake and eat it too. You can have the cops do the main characters. You can have supervillains show up, and you don't have to have Batman in every episode. It's okay. Gotham Central already fits that narrative.
Right? You're like, guys.
But it's just one of those things where, like, it's weird to have a bunch of pre-established villains who become fully formed while Batman's, like, 12.
Yeah.
So what, are they going to be in, like, their fucking 50s
by the time Batman... he's kicking their ass?
Yeah, that was sort of like the weird thing about Joker, where, like, is Batman going to be punching, like, a 70-year-old Joker?
Yeah, you're like, wait a fucking second here. And, well, they try to make him his age.
Yeah.
Before they kill him, and then they bring him back several times. Gotham's a goddamn mess. Gotham is just like, I like Batman. Let me do things. And you're like,
it's so odd.
It's odd. And I often talk about when you're redoing a story, having motivation behind the changes. You know, like a lot of people will say for Earth 1, you're just making him violent to make him violent. And you're like, no, because we're talking about a guy who lost his whole life before being a human, and he's kind of had a fucked up childhood. He's gonna be a little angry. He's gonna be a little fucking angry.
Yeah, like, it's basically Superman is sort of an angsty teen. It's also the idea that like a kid's upbringing in modern day would kind of be different than versus the 1930s. Yeah. So he might have a different outlook on life than he would have back in the day.
Exactly. And I think another run that kind of does that is, of course, the New 52 run, where they're like, it's Superman, and it's before he gets the suit, he's just wearing a t-shirt and a cape. And first off, I don't care how New 52 went in general with Superman, because, of course, what's his name steps in and kind of fucks it up.
Oh, yeah, I know you're talking about.
Chris Sorry, Liefeld. Liefeld steps in.
It wasn't Liefeld. Liefeld was working on stuff like Deathstroke at the time.
No,
we think about
but he was doing. He was also doing Red Hood and the Outlaws, and then he did Superman story.
But that wasn't Liefeld. It was someone else. Oh. We compare him to Liefeld a lot because they have very like similar writing styles.
Right.
Yeah.
Jesus,
I know who you're talking about.
Them up.
Maybe I've just repressed it.
Yeah, you're like keep it down, keep it down, keep it down.
Yeah.
But
New 52 Superman is so funny.
It's like it's
not getting to comic book like deep universe shit right now. It's a whole thing.
It's a whole thing, but it's one of those things that like I do. First off, I love that suit. I love the just jeans, Superman shirt, and a cape because of course it's the like, you know, people like to put on the cape to feel like Superman.
Yeah.
You know, like and to like do that like basic suit for him. You know, you can do lazy cosplays. It's like I like when it can be simple. You know, like I'm like, oh, that's good. You know, but of course I don't think that the New 52 origin it's very all over the place sometimes, and it's of course a lot of writers doing many different takes on his origin.
They like really
and they had to you feel the 5 years the most with Superman and Batman. Those are the 5 years for other people. You're like, fine, that could have all happened in 5 years, and then but for Batman, you're like, how the fuck did they shove all this Batman history in 5 years? But we're not talking about New 52.
That's deep cut, like in universe stuff that we don't need to worry about right now.
But basically, what I'm saying is that there's a lot of like restarts to try to do like the angry
Scott Lobdell.
Oh my god, you're right. I always get Liefeld and Lobdell mixed up.
Lobdell, two syllables starts with a Dell.
Like, but Lobdell, he was a big. I think. No offense to the guy, I think he's added a lot to comics over the years. Just messy sometimes.
Yeah,
messy.
And it's so weird that like that was the Superman run that stuck, because when the main Superman book had started the New 52, they were jumping writer to writer to writer. No one was sticking around.
Yeah,
they were really struggling with that one.
The real win from New 52, of course, and I don't even know if it counts as New 52. All-Star Is it All-Star Superman? All-Star Superman with Scott Snyder. Is like
Superman Unleashed.
Superman Unleashed. Sorry.
Oh no, Superman Unchained.
Unchained. That's
it. That was New 52. It was in universe.
It's in universe.
Yeah.
Unchained is absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, it's such a short run.
Such a short run.
Same thing with like Jeff Johns' run.
Tiny.
With John Romita Jr. That was also very good.
Kind of like American Alien.
But
like,
but that's also sort of a running thing. A lot of great Superman runs are very short.
Very short.
Yeah.
It's like most of my shelf here is Batman, and then like I have this small Superman section next to him, and it's not because lack of stories. There's actually a lot of Superman books there. They're just small, and you're like, oh, okay. Like,
it's interesting that for a character like so powerful and with so much baggage and like so much to offer the world, that his best stories are very succinct.
You're like, wait, okay, and I mean, that's important, like, is to get it to small packages.
I guess we already talked about Earth 1 basically. Basically, like if you liked Man of Steel, a lot of Man of Steel is this. It's like a mix of this and John Byrne's run.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people who are into Superman will be like, lame that we're bringing this up, especially because I know
Straczynski.
He's got a bad reputation with Superman comics.
Yeah, because
he wrote Superman.
He had a long run pre New 52 that was not good.
Did he write Superman Grounded?
Yes.
And that's the guys. Important thing to know about getting into Superman comics is, of course, the ones you should absolutely avoid, like stay the fuck away from. And it's a very short list. Superman Grounded.
It's so funny that was the final storyline before the reboot.
Right? You're like, what? Why?
But it's just one of those things where like you find out that sometimes maybe a writer is better off when they don't have to deal with in-universe continuity stuff, or like this feels like so much of its own thing and it works. Whereas like the constraints of in-universe stuff didn't really work out for Superman Grounded and like his run on Superman in general. That's just the way it is.
It's just the way it is.
But shout out to Straczynski. Good writers, written a lot of good books. Actually, the creator of Babylon 5. We made that joke.
Holy shit.
Yeah. He's trying to reboot that. He's been edging away from comics a lot lately because his vision is deteriorating.
Yeah.
So he hasn't been doing comics as much lately. He's trying to trying to do a bunch of like other mediums before he loses his vision entirely.
Yes. Yeah.
So he's trying to write plays and more movies and stuff.
So the other origin, of course, that we have to bring up, is and I think we'll have one more after this. Is of course I think Secret Identity, which I don't have.
Yeah, we can talk about Secret Identity briefly. Secret Identity is an interesting one.
Yeah.
Because it's not technically a Superman story.
No.
It's a story about a kid named Clark Kent in a world where Superman exists as a pop culture icon, who then gets Superman's powers, and it's the idea of like what does it mean to measure up to the ideal of Superman? Yeah. It's really meta.
Super meta.
It's weird to describe like out loud like this, but give it a shot.
It's definitely, it is weird to say. You're like, a guy named Clark Kent all of a sudden gets Superman powers. You're like, what?
It's a really weird one to describe on paper, but it's a great story.
Now, if we're talking about what, there's a reason why Superman Secret Origin has like David S. Goyer fucking introducing it at the bottom here, is that this is what I feel like Secret Origin's great, but it's also what I think they were reading when they were making Man of Steel, you know, like, and they were like trying to like figure out what to do next, is like being like, okay, what do we do here? Secret Origin, the reason why it stands out is, of course, Jeff Johns loves Superman.
Yeah.
Loves him. And I don't say that lightly. The man who's literally kept Superman at the center of the DC universe is Jeff Johns. He literally, like, and Doomsday Clock is literally just like, it literally like cements the idea that...
Yeah, Dr. Manhattan is characterized basically as an insert for Jeff Johns to be like, I love Superman.
Yeah, he's like, hey, the DC universe wouldn't exist without him. And you're like, you're right. You're exactly right.
And also shout out to Gary Frank, who I love. Every time they work together specifically, I get excited. Like,
it's amazing.
When they said that Doomsday Clock was going to be a thing, I'm like, the first thing was like, he better be working with Gary Frank. And it did. And it was perfect. It worked out. You can listen to the Watchmen episodes for that.
Yes.
Secret
Gary
Origin
Frank is
an
fantastic.
Interesting one. I've always preferred it to other origins, even if I like those origins. Like, I like Birthright. I like John Byrne's run on Man of Steel. But I like that this one is sort of gets to the point. It's short, it's sweet, and it's not afraid to just be comic booky as shit.
Yes. That's what I would say about this, is that, like, the other ones sometimes try to get away from the cheese of Superman, other than, of course, our first one there, All-Star Superman, where it really leans into the comics. This really leans into the history of Superman, even though it's a story, you know?
Yeah, like, because we had, like, retconned stuff already when Birthright became the new origin retroactively. Yeah. And this one's like, okay, let's bring it back to basics. We're going to keep a lot of that stuff, but we're also going to bring in the real comic book shit, like his adventures as Superboy with the Legion of Superheroes and things like that.
So I will say, I fucking hate. I've probably said it before. I fucking hate the.
We've been saying this since the real book Don't Have Batman days.
I fucking hate the Legion of Superheroes. I hate them. I just there's nothing more snooze fest to me than Legion of Superheroes,
because they only have ever one story to tell. Like, this might affect the future.
It might affect the future, so we gotta come here and like I'll disappear because we fucked up the future.
I could get the appeal of the Legion, like maybe back in their inception, like they have that real sort of like, oh my god, the future, the world of tomorrow, sort of like Jetson-y sort of thing going on for them. But as far as like modern comics, they really serve like no interesting function.
It's one of those things where they are definitely trying to be like, look, they're like X-Men, where they have a bunch of different powers and stuff like that. And you're just like, yeah, but they're weird. You know, like they're strange, you know, like, and it's like, I
don't like it.
I don't like them. I will say this is probably the only Legion story other than Doomsday Clock where I'm like,
okay.
Okay.
I think it really helped Doomsday Clock that it was just Saturn Girl and nothing else.
They're like, don't fucking think about it. Just Saturn Girl. We don't have to worry about anything else. Which, of course, Saturn Girl plays a big part of this.
It's so funny. I've been reading Tom King's Batman lately, and Saturn Girl's in it because it takes place before Doomsday Clock. When she's still Jane Doe in Arkham Asylum.
You're like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. I do think that it's funny because it's hard to do Legion of Superheroes. It's hard because if they show up in a story, it's like, you know, they're going to survive through it, or like, you know, everyone's going to survive through it. It's like, you know, nothing's going to go bad when the Legion showed up, even though they're supposed to mean like, oh, really bad shit's going down, you know, like, oh shit, like the futures is at stake here. But like reality, most of the time they're not stepping in to do that, you know, like,
but
like,
Secret Origin, in the same way that we talked about All-Star, like making sort of everything count, Secret Origins likes to do, where it likes to reconcile comic booky stuff for Superman as well as pop culture stuff, like the fact that Gary Frank basically draws Superman in this to look like Christopher Reeve.
I mean, look at that face. It's just Christopher Reeve.
Yeah.
You know, like you're just like, there he is. I do think it's funny because this comic book is one of the most memed of all like comic books. It's funny because a lot of people use frames from this just because Gary Frank does some like transition faces that are like
very funny.
Yeah. And
this is also the book that canonizes that old school Lex Luthor meme about stealing the cakes.
Yeah. You're like, what?
And there's also, and we had talked about Smallville, there's a little bit of direct sort of Smallville connection in here with the idea that Lex lived in Smallville alongside Clark Kent, and they were kind of friends before they became enemies.
I do like
that. Was a direct, like, Smallville's really popular right now, so we should kind of pull from that a little bit.
Work it in.
Yeah.
I do like that little ad, you know, like, it's kind of like the way I like Superman sometimes feels very much like Spider-Man, where it's like, I do like those early relationships. Like, of course he's going to end up with Lois Lane, or of course he's going to end up with Mary Jane, but it's fun to do the Gwen Stacy's, the Betty Brant,
the Lana Lang.
So, you know, like, it's fun to do those, you know, because of course there's either inherent tragedy or it's like, where the fuck did they go?
They really fucking play that up at Smallville. Just like, they make Lana like the perfect woman in that show.
And you're like, but why would you get rid of this perfect woman?
It will never work out because he's meant to be with Lois.
You're just like, wait, what? What?
It's funny because they introduced Lois actually earlier than you would think.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're like season 4 Lois Lane. You're like, what? Oh, okay.
All right, she's here. You're like, because that's supposed to be, you know, especially here, it's like he doesn't meet Lois
until he moves out of Smallville and goes to Metropolis. That's like usual thing.
Intimidating part of the new city, you know, like it's such a like, oh, Lois Lane, the indomitable Lois Lane, you know, like
the Spitfire.
I do like Lois Lane in this story. I think she's fantastic in this, and I think this is a great origin story.
I've always loved the way John writes Lois. I feel like a few writers don't really know how to characterize Lois properly.
I will say Secret Origin is less for new people. That's definitely the reason why it's not just called Origin.
It's also the reason.
Origin.
It's also the reason when we did the original How to Get Into Comics episode that we didn't bring it up, because we only did like 3 books for big characters for the most part, and we're like, Secret Origins. It's not inaccessible completely, but it's got some baggage. Yeah.
It's like, it's definitely like, especially I feel with the League, you're just like, that
was also part of its attitude. Like it was making a new origin for people who already knew what the score was to sort of just like reevaluate things.
Now, one of the things that's on here that I think has to come up when you're talking about Superman's story is, of course, an Elseworld story. This is another origin, so we're kind of bringing it up.
And in all fairness, we've gone into extensive detail about Red Sun. We had a whole Red Sun episode.
We have a whole Red Sun episode, so please listen to that episode. But basically what we're saying is how fun is the idea of like a small thing changed Superman and he landed in Russia instead. And what happens when he's a Russian agent instead of Truth, Justice, and American Way Superman, you know, like
turns out it's a problem.
It turned out it's a problem. We did talk about the differences between the movie and the comic book when we talked about the movie. I do still enjoy this more than the movie. It's deeper.
The movie takes liberties, but it still works for what it is. Like, I do like the movie.
I just think that Red Sun does such a good job of like tackling what the fuck they're trying to say.
Yeah,
you know?
And the comic is also inherently more tragic because we, like we talked about in the actual episode, like the comic has a different ending.
Yeah. I do. I mean, I love the All-Star Superman kind of ending of Red Sun, where it's like, it's all circular. Like, it's all very
But whereas,
circular.
like, All-Star is very like beautiful, and it's like how it's cyclical, and this is just like, oh, it's just a cycle of tragedy forever. It's kind of like the original Apes movies. It's so funny.
Yeah, where you're like, and humanity ruined it.
It just loops around to just an endless cycle of pain. It's a bootstrap paradox, and it's very sad.
Yeah, you're like, I think one of the best things about this book, and of course the movie, is the costume design of Superman, and of course Batman here is absolutely incredible. I love the dark red suit and the hammer and sickle of communist Superman
instead of the S. Yeah,
and
it's like that thing where it's just like. But it's like a tickle. You're like, yeah, it's kind of nice.
Yeah, it's kind of nice. I definitely do think they still very much see Mark Miller very much sees like Russia as big bad guy and communism bad, and like that's what I.
That is a product of its time. That's also why the movie works a little more, because it has more of a modern perspective.
Where it's like, hey. Communism's a way of thought too, not just all the bad examples we've seen through American propaganda. Like you're like, hey, okay, right, at least we can talk about that shit. Like at least we can bring it up. Now, that's pretty much all the origin was that we kind of talked about.
Yeah, standalones in general, really.
Standalones in general. Now. Well, I would say this is a standalone too, so I might as well bring this up because this does not connect with anything.
Yeah, this I have not read, but I've heard people loved it when it first came out. I just haven't read it.
Superman smashes the Klan. Of course, that title, I was like, I'm buying this fucking book.
Yeah.
I love that title. Really, it's a young adult Superman story. It's very much like supposed to be a young adult story of immigrants moving into Metropolis and dealing with the racism that comes with being an Asian immigrant in the city, and kind of Superman reflecting on his immigration status. And it's a lot of fun, of course. With a title like this, you kind of think it's going to be violent, smashes the Klan, but it's not. It's not. It's based off of the funny thing is, of course, this is Superman Smashes the Klan is the title of a radio play of Superman. Because that's another important thing you have to talk about with Superman. It's been coming out for so long. There was literal radio stories of Superman, not comic books, fucking just like reading a story on the radio, guys, and here comes Superman. And they literally had Superman Smashes the Klan where he literally fucks up the Ku Klux Klan because they were picking on Asian immigrants. So this is kind of a big reinterpretation, modern take of that.
Of like those old radio serials, to the point where like, it's definitely not an accident that he has like the black and yellow S symbol like the old Max Fleischer cartoons.
Yep. Yeah. It's like, it's not a mistake here. You literally do not have to read any other Superman to get this. This is one of those ones that you're just like, here you go. Here, read some Superman kicking the shit out of the Ku Klux Klan. And you're like, hell yeah, bro. For a young adult novel, it's able to be unflinching, and I do enjoy that. Where it's like, it's got a lot of courage and a lot of bravery without feeling like inflated or pompous. It's very it's able to be inspiring, which is nice. And you still get like a real true Superman story, and he gets to punch Nazis. Not fucking bad.
And like actual Nazis, not some like sidestep bullshit like they do with Hydra in the MCU.
Right? They're like, not a Nazi. You're like, no, Nazi. I love they keep calling him the Superman, the German the guy here, the super Nazi, Adam Man, Avenger of the Master Race, he calls himself. You're like, fuck you, dude. But I really enjoy this because it's got some nice twists. It feels like it's accessible to young audiences. So if you're looking for something to like, because that's the thing, is a lot of this is very adultish. I would say it's so. Like, I would absolutely hand these to a teen. I would absolutely hand these to teens. But it's like, if we're talking like 10 and under, this is more the story I'd want to hand them, Not that this is like a baby, like, not saying like this is not deep, this is baby story. It's like, this is very accessible, and it's very young adult. I love the art. It was a summer read this summer, and it was fantastic.
Sounds like I need to borrow this and read it.
Yes, absolutely. It's a good one. Very simple too. I mean, I crushed it. Next up on away from the standalones, we're going to talk about some notable runs. So of course, we don't have a couple of these to show as examples, but you know you know what to look for. John Byrne's Man of Steel run.
Yes. So this was the first like major run after Crisis on Infinite Earth that was reinventing the wheel, not only post Superman 78, but also post Crisis, where you know all the universes have merged and we're starting with a clean slate. And so this defined Superman for the longest time. This was John Byrne's run of the character. He's also one of my favorite artists to work on the character. I love the way he draws Superman.
It's just fantastic. It's like it's so iconic. Like when you think of Superman and the way he is, you're thinking John Byrne. Like it's like right there.
This era of Superman really leaned into like harder sci-fi. I would say.
This was
This was when the birthing matrix was a thing. Which, if you've seen Man of Steel, it's basically what the Codex was. The idea that like Kryptonians are grown as opposed to bred. Which Man of Steel does a different thing. Where like, oh, he's the only natural birth on Krypton in years. Whereas like here, like, no, he's a birthing matrix baby just like every other Kryptonian, because they really lean to like, well, they're aliens, so the way they procreate is completely different.
Completely different.
Yeah. Because even after John Byrne had left the book, after they had done like the Death of Zod thing, there was a whole period after that where Superman was basically like imposing self-exile on himself from Earth and like traveled through space for a really extended period of time. So like if you're really into like the sci-fi aspects of Superman, this is the run where an era you should start with.
And I will say that that's definitely one of the reasons why I think when you think Batman and Superman, they're opposites, is that like Batman is always down to earth, like street level stories most of the time. And Superman is a platform for sci-fi, you know, like, and they can literally like do sci-fi stories.
And
of
sometimes
course there's down to earth versions.
And sometimes there are whole runs where like they kind of edge away from the sci-fi stuff and kind of keep it to Earth.
They're like,
but then you have runs who are just like, well, he's an alien. Let's fucking tell some weird alien shit.
Yeah, you know, like you're like what? Now we already talked about Earth 1 here, which is 3 books long, and a 4th book might come. Maybe. Earth 1 is kind of in a limbo right now, where it's like the pandemic came, so it's like they had to slash a bunch of lines, and it's
also because of J. Michael Straczynski's health, like I had said. So it's like, in a weird place.
It's in a weird place. It's like we did get Grant Morrison's Wonder Woman a couple 2 years ago now, but it's like one of those things where it's like it still means the Earth 1 as a whole is kind of shaky at the moment, which makes it, I feel like, more of a standalone than a run. But
it's a shame because I really like the Earth 1 books. They remind me a lot of like the Ultimate Universe for Marvel, even though they don't like really cross over. Just the idea that like it's the same conceit. Like it's a modern reboot take outside of established continuity to bring in new readers.
But differently than Ultimate Comics, doesn't come out issue to issue. It is straight just volume, trade paperback,
which is also nice.
Paperback. Which as guys who don't collect comics every fucking day,
single issue
anymore,
like we used to,
this is pretty great. You know, just to be like a whole story that came out at the same time, so I'm all current. Just in a volume.
Yeah, that's kind of my thing with Saga coming back. Yeah, it's back. Can't wait for the trade to come out.
You're like, fuck. It's going to be a bit. Of course, Greg Pak's Action Comics.
Which is a more recent one.
Pretty fantastic.
Yeah. If I remember correctly, it was like right before Rebirth started. Very fun. Greg Pak's always been like, I feel like one of those underappreciated writers.
I mean, of course, he's World War Hulk. The man's iconic. The man's fucking made World War Hulk. Like, it's one of the most popular Marvel storylines of all time.
But beyond that, it's like one of those things where like you sort of forget. You're like, oh yeah, Greg Pak. He's like kind of one of those hidden talents you almost forget about.
And you shouldn't, because he's fantastic. Anything he's writing, you're like, get in on that. And of course, Action Comics, I think, is a lot of fun under his guise. Then of course we Peter J. Tomasi and Patrick Gleason Superman.
This was a recent read for me, like a while back.
Yeah.
It was because this is like post Rebirth.
Okay.
So it's fairly recent. This was before Bendis took over the book.
Yep.
And it's by the same guys who did Batman and Robin for the New 52 back in the day. And just like Batman and Robin, if you loved all the dad stuff and that, they lean into the dad stuff with this one because you have John Kent in this. And this was before they aged him up in the Bendis run. So it's just like my son.
Little son,
yes. My little Superboy son.
Which I dig.
Yeah.
I like
it's super
I like
good.
that.
I
it's
really
fun.
want to read Super Sons. I know people loved it.
Yeah.
And people were pissed when they aged up John Kent because they couldn't do Super Sons anymore.
Yeah, you're like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
What the shit, guys? And you're like, but why? But they're doing different things with them now. You know? Like
even
with
Damien's
like you're like, wow.
Yeah, he's like basically a grown man now, and he's sort of just like another Superman. So you have to clarify, which I hate. It's just like Miles being in 616. Like, why do we have two dudes named Spider-Man? It's just like Spider-Man. Spider-Man. No, the black one. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, what do you mean by that?
Hey, you watch yourself. But yeah, it's just one of those things. But I mean, those characters are growing. Even Damien now is getting older.
I mean, we just brought up, but we haven't said anything about Black Superman. About is it is it World 52 that he's?
Well, which one are you talking about? Are you talking about Calvin Harris or are you talking about Val Zod? Val Zod from Earth 2.
Yeah, Val Zod
New
from Earth
52's
2.
version of Earth 2. Yeah,
and now Earth 2 is actually, I do bring this up a lot. Earth 2 is a great way to just like see a different Superman story. You know, like Earth 2 is a great way to be like, first off, it's a great different version of all the DC Universe stuff, as Tom Taylor does every time. He's always just like, I'm going to do a more violent take. And you're like, fuck yeah, bro.
He was the second writer on that, wasn't he? Because I think it was Paul Levitz at the start.
Yeah, Paul Levitz at the start.
And it was still good.
Yeah,
but then
I just think Tom Taylor
it just continued to
like
push it once Tom Taylor brought in. He loves his alternate universe stuff where the main characters can fucking die. It's a pattern with him. Because I think he just did that. Yeah. He did Injustice. He's the fucking writer for Deceased, which is basically DC's Marvel Zombies.
Which I have back there. Deceased was great. Deceased was it's one of the best Darkseid stories, even though he just fucking dies there. You know, like, you're like, still great.
He loves his edge, but he knows how to work it.
He does. He really does know how to work it. It's basically Marvel Zombies. I would say Deceased is just Marvel Zombies, but in like they're zombies now, but they're not talking, which is the weird part about Marvel Zombies, of course.
That they're still intelligent. At least in the original book.
Which would, of course, in the What If episode, they're like,
they're
not
just
intelligent.
Zombies.
They're just zombies, which you're kind of like,
oh,
come on, man. I wanted to see them all say gross stuff about eating people. You're like, that's the best part about Robert Kirkman's run. Now, does this count as a run? I would say it does.
I would say as a run, yeah. I think I put it later down on the list as like team ups.
Yeah, as a team up thing, which we're basically at.
We can talk about it now.
The team up part. Because this really is a team up part, but it's also one of my favorite runs of Superman. I just have one book here. This is a many deep book series, and I don't even know if this is my favorite one. This was just one that I fucking got because I think it was like $2 fucking. You know, like it was one of those things where it was like absolute power was like $1 or something.
I have like the first big volume, which basically covers Public Enemies.
Yep, which is
covers
the gem.
And it covers the reintroduction of Supergirl.
Oh,
yeah. So it has like the Loeb and McGinnis and then Loeb and Turner.
Nice.
Yeah, which rest in peace, Michael Turner.
Yeah,
he's been gone for a little while, but it was just wild to me because when I put that on the list, I just realized how old I was. I'm like, oh wow, I'm almost 30. Oh wow, Michael Turner died when he was 37.
Yeah, you're like, fuck.
That's really young. Yeah. And he was everywhere back then.
He really was. It's incredible. There's an animated movie, Batman, Superman,
Public Enemies, which is very, very close.
Very close.
And it was also
and they even tried to do the style.
Yeah, that was back in the day when they actually tried to replicate the art style of the comics, which I miss.
Yeah, I miss
so much. Like, even if it was like unsuccessful, they would try.
I really wish they did that with Long Halloween. Like, it's one of those things where you're like, Long Halloween would have been so much better as like an artful, like great take on Loeb's art.
Like back in the day, like Justice League.
I mean,
The New Frontier literally looked like Darwin Cook's art style.
Yeah,
like All-Star Superman. Despite how out there Frank Quitely's art style is, they managed to find a happy medium to make it work for animation. In fact, I had a conversation with Frank Quitely about it at a con. It was great.
It's great.
Yeah.
Also, Frank Quitely's so nice in person.
But with this, like, this was one of the better ones where, like, yeah, that looks just like Ed McGuinness's art style.
Right? You're like, there it is. There it is. I'm not recommending this exact one right here, Absolute Power. It's
this
fun.
is sort of middle of the run. Yeah,
it's fun, but it's not like we're not recommending that. We're just recommending the run in general.
Yeah, for Superman Batman, written by Jeff Loeb with a few different artists.
And I mean, he's fantastic, dude. He's just, it's so good, and it's one of those things where both characters get to, like, we've already talked about it, that Superman stories, they have to nerf him, they have to take him out of the story. With Batman/Superman, Superman/Batman, they really get to do their own things. You know, like, Superman's not solving every problem in an instant. It's like very like they both have to work at it.
And it's one of those things where, like,
works.
This is, and we've had a few different, like, Superman, Batman, Superman, like, team up books.
Yeah.
But this has been the best one. Just because, one, we know, based on Long Halloween and Dark Victory and For All Seasons, that Jeff Loeb knows how to write these two characters.
Seriously.
But he knows how to make them a successful duo in a way that, like, other takes on this team up as a book haven't worked.
Yeah. It's like sometimes, it's like, and I do like the many different versions. Of course, you have Batman, Superman, like, literally fighting each other, being very buddy-buddy, being very close friends, being like, obviously very, like, precautious around Superman, you know, like, it's like,
but them as, like, a two-man team as a book tends to be a little hard for writers, and they nail it here. They bounce off of each other so well because they're characterized properly.
It's fantastic. Now, of course, did Jeff Loeb do Generations? Is that
no? John Byrne did Generations.
John Byrne. There's Batman,
Superman Batman
Generations.
Yeah, we've talked about it before. It's essentially a story.
It is under this line. So it is Superman Batman.
Yeah.
That's the confusing part about comics, of course, is that, like,
because you'll have, like, Batman, but then you'll have, like, Batman 2011, which is New 52.
Yeah.
Batman 2014, which is the Tom King run.
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
it gets confusing.
Gets confusing.
That's why we usually, like, say by whatever author / artist.
So you're not like, which
So,
Action Comics?
Superman
You know, like,
Batman Generations was a standalone, like, little limited series that John Byrne did in, like, the late 90s, early 2000s, where it was basically telling the story of Batman and Superman as if they were being told in real time.
Yep.
So, like, they actually start in 1938, and the characters age as if they would in real time as the decades pass. It's really fascinating. It's a great story.
It's a great Loeb read. Now, of course, there's a lot of great, when we're talking team-ups, you have to talk about Justice League, because he's, of course, often portrayed as the head of Justice League. And Justice League of America, I have back here JLA, but it's not really a Superman story.
No.
But, of course, the Grant Morrison run, he was like, I'm going to lean into Batman Red and Blue because that's happening right now in the 90s. Superman Red and Blue. Sorry, Superman Red and Blue. And because that's happening right now. And,
well, you know, it kind of shifts the status quo, so you kind of had no choice.
I had no choice. It's wild. Having that character instead of normal Superman, you're like, okay.
That whole run it's a wild run.
Yeah.
It's got a lot of stuff. Like, it incorporates Superman Red and Blue. Morpheus from the Sandman shows up in it at one point.
The Black
and
Rider,
it's like end
so
of
many
Sandman
things.
Morpheus too, where he's like white, and so I'm like, oh, all right, that's pretty
it's after
sweet.
the story. You're
Yeah.
like,
That's kind of dope.
It's one of those things where there's a lot of great versions of him out there that it's hard to nail down, but it's one of those things that if you do want great Superman stories, you do have to go to Justice League.
Yeah,
because he's usually doing great things in there.
Because when it's a Justice League story, it tends to, by extension, encompass almost the entire DCU at large.
Yeah, because they're like, hey, this is the
if it's
DC
a Justice League level
book.
threat, then it's a problem.
Yeah. Instead of just a Superman threat. And I think that can be the problem with writing Superman into the Justice League is, of course, we already said it, they don't know how to be like, it's not a Superman problem, it's a Justice League problem. And it's like, sometimes it's hard to figure out, like...
Yeah, like... if
hard
it's,
to nail down.
Yeah, like, if this isn't a problem for Superman, like, why would the Justice League be involved?
Right.
Yeah, it's odd.
Odd.
It's a tough nut to crack.
It's a tough nut to crack. It's like you gotta really make it. That's the problem with doing like a constant Justice League story. Is I feel like sometimes the line should just come back when there's like an actual threat for them to do, instead of like, we have to keep doing threats that Justice League has to handle. You know,
this is why we kept Superman dead in the Justice League movie for most of it.
Yeah, because they were like,
And even if we were to get like sequels based on like that version, then they make Superman evil, so you have that excuse. You're like, they're trying to write around it. Yep. It's a tough one.
Trying to write around it. Now we've talked about like the death of Superman and a lot of things, but one of I think the most interesting parts of Superman that doesn't get brought up often, he's kind of Twilight Superman, and they deal with that in All-Star Superman, and they're dealing with it here in Kingdom Come. Kingdom Come is, of course, one of the iconic DC like universe stories. You know, like it's not just a Superman story. It's like the whole DC universe. It's the whole thing.
But when you think of like the best stories involving Superman, like you're gonna think Kingdom Come.
You're gonna think Kingdom Come. Okay, first off, it's about these two names right here. Mark Waid, legend, living legend. And then you have the fucking god himself, that
Alex
is
Ross.
Alex Ross. Holy shit. If you don't follow the Galaxy of Geek on Twitter, I constantly am just retweeting Alex Ross because he's just like posting his art, and I'm just like, fantastic. I'm just like, retweet that on the page.
I love it when he posts like his old art for like his drawings when he was a kid, and even then I'm like, Alex Ross, you at age 9 had a really good sense of anatomy. Like, what the fuck?
It's true. You're like, damn, dude, you're so damn realistic. I love this story. This may be one of my favorite DC stories, hands down.
Yeah.
There's a reason why anytime anything Kingdom Come comes up, I'm like, I'm listening.
Yeah.
I'm listening. It says it right there. It's a winner of 5 Eisner Awards.
Yeah, and kind of like Dark Knight Returns, this was one of those stories where like they tried so hard to make it be the canon where the universe would end up, and it just never worked out.
Yeah, it's true. It's like a lot of they allude to that, like, oh, this is Kingdom Come Superman in a lot of runs. You know, like they bring in Kingdom Come Superman to be like, oh, that's the future.
That's what our future's gonna be.
Yeah, it's gonna be Kingdom Come instead of like Batman Beyond or something like that.
Yeah, you can't make one future definitive because these stories never end. So they will never be a definitive endpoint. That's sort of the issue.
It's sort of the issue. I think they do, and even with Kingdom Come, there's a sequel. There's Kingdom Come.
Thy Kingdom Come.
Thy Kingdom Come, which you're just like,
which isn't as good.
Yeah, it's not as good, guys. You don't
like
this. And of course, there's also Justice. Volumes 1 through 3.
This is a great self-contained one and done story. It shouldn't have been sequelized to begin with.
Yeah, it should have just been like, and we did it, guys.
Yeah.
You know, like, and we fucking nailed it. And they really do. They fucking nail it here. First off, one of my favorite things about this is, of course, old man Superman in all this. Look. First off, look at his goddamn face here. Look how good Alex Ross is. God damn! He's absolutely fantastic in all of this. And really shows off how important Superman is in all of this, you know? Like,
so this is essentially, I wouldn't say a post-apocalyptic story, but it's a story in which Superman's been retired for a while because he's sort of given away... He's sort of like given up to like this new generation of much more violent heroes. And it's the idea of like someone as optimistic as Superman coming back into the fold to like fix this shit.
Yeah, right? Like he's got to step in to fix it up. It's also quite the like violent story. It's not afraid to be like, I fucking murdered that guy. You know, like that guy's dead. It's also my favorite Spirit story. The Spirit himself.
You mean the Spectre?
Spectre. Sorry, I'm thinking of Marvel. Spectre. It's absolutely my favorite Spectre story because they're able to like make Spectre such an important part of the story that he's like some sort of like angel from God who's like supposed to view over this, and like it's wild. It's just a fucking masterpiece.
Yeah.
It's hard to say, but it's like,
read it.
Just read it, because it's one of those things where I could say a bunch of things about what this is, Kingdom Come. It's not going to put it into words for you. It's not until you fucking read it and witness it yourself. That's the thing. It's sort of like a witnessing because it's amazing art.
Yeah, any page you could just put up on your wall, just blow it up.
Seriously.
Also, this is one of my favorite, just from an aesthetic standpoint, takes on Green Lantern. I fucking love the emerald
full armor,
the full armored like emerald knight Green Lantern with the construct sword. It's the dopest shit in the world.
You're like, damn, dude, damn. It's fantastic redesigns of pretty much everybody. I do love even Power Girl being like buff as shit in her older age, and Wonder Woman with the gray hair,
and one of the best Superman symbols. It's so simple,
and of course, Batman gets a whole new armor in this. You're like, fuck yeah, dude, you know, like, and it's just really like, and of course you have Batman in kind of in a Batman Beyond state where he's like using armor to like make sure he's still able to.
He can't
fight.
really do it just based on his own bones and muscles anymore. He's too old.
I do love Red Robin is used so much in this too. That's the other thing. Is like you feel like Mark Waid really does love the universe.
Yeah, this was the first time Red Robin was established as a thing before they actually made that a thing in like mainstream continuity. Yeah.
I didn't know that. It comes from this?
It came from this, and then they made it a thing afterwards where they're like, well, we need to make Tim something.
That's funny. I didn't know that. I thought it was just something that they were like, oh yeah, Red Robin's a thing. Let's bring him in. Let's make him the future version.
No, he hadn't been a thing at this point. He was still
See, you learned something new even now.
He was still the Robin when this came out.
Okay.
Yeah.
I dig that. Especially because I think it's like you have Nightwing. Yeah, it's like it's important. Red Robin's important because it's like you know, they're all being built to like take over the Batman legacy, but like really Damian's now the guy who has to take over the legacy. He's literally his son. So it's like, what do the other Robins do?
Yeah, and we've talked about this before, that like Tim is sort of in this like weird place right now.
Yeah.
Because he's like the weird middle child. Like he's not allowed to kind of move on to become a new thing.
Become a Teen Titan or anything.
Because Red Robin's not as drastic a reinvention as just like, I am now Nightwing. I am now Red Hood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're just like,
But him being Red Robin was also kind of the point, because he was like the proudest one of being a Robin.
Yeah,
and didn't want to distance himself from it, like Dick and Jason. So you're like, damn it, we don't know what to do with Tim right now.
It's funny. Just talking about this makes me love Batman so much. It's one of those things that I think they come hand in hand. I think when we love Batman so much, it's one of those things that it's always talking about Batman. But like, Superman is such a great compliment to him. It's such a great, almost an antithesis, you know, like in a way. And it's like, I think they're important to have together, you know, in a world where we have this dark, stormy Batman. You gotta have the optimistic, hopeful, all-powerful man. You know, like you're just like somehow it works all
which
together.
I'm sure was a lot of the criticism towards Man of Steel, but I feel like Man of Steel isn't as hopeless as people make it out to be.
Yeah,
it really isn't.
Go rewatch it, guys. I will say that now is in a world where we now have gotten the Snyder cut. Go back.
Yeah, the entire thing about Man of Steel is that it's trying to argue optimism in a much darker, more realistic world. Yeah. It's basically shining a lens at the audience to be like, we're kind of a cynical people. Yeah. And this is how this would actually go down. But he's still trying.
Instead of being like, thanks, Superman, for coming and being our friend. You know, like, it's like, no, people wouldn't do that.
We all know we love those movies that are just like, you audience, you're the problem.
You're the fucking problem. You're the reason.
And lo and behold, every time one of those comes out, it always becomes super controversial. It's just like, I don't want to be seen.
I don't want to.
They called me out.
Don't look at me.
Don't perceive me.
I don't want to be perceived. But that kind of comes to our end of our list here. A big How to Get Into Superman episode. I hope this was helpful for you. I hope that you heard about some stories you haven't seen before, or maybe got a different take on a Superman story you didn't really like. Because I know some of these, I know some people who complain about them, you know, like, and they're totally valid. I think that sometimes Superman can be cheesy. And I think that, but some of these can turn that cheese into like hope. And
well, you know, like that's sort of the benefit of a character that's been around for 80 years is that there's plenty of different flavors to choose from.
Definitely. And I think that, you know, we live in a world where we just want to reinvent Superman, you know, like, and that's kind of the issue, is that like, unlike Batman, where it's like, this is the way he is, this is the way we're going to do Batman, you know, like we live in a world where I really do think the next Superman could be Val Zod, you know, like you're just like, it really could be like Barack Obama Superman. Like a really
Calvin Harris was definitely the Obama one.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's right. You're right.
Yeah.
It was him.
Val Zod was different.
Was basically Michael B. Jordan. Like, it's guys, if you don't make Michael B. Jordan fucking Superman, even in just like a DC like multiverse of madness sort of way,
a consistent Superman series. Like, we haven't had a Superman sequel in decades.
Oh my god!
Because
and of course there's Superman and Lois right now, which I hear started off well.
Oh, like all of them do until they're not good.
Yeah.
That's why I didn't. That's why I didn't give it a chance.
I know,
because I'm like, yeah, but it's really good. I'm like, yeah, they all start good.
It's kind of like Flash too, where I was like, wow, we're doing so good. And then now we're like seasons later, and I'm like, what the fuck is happening?
The first 3 seasons of Flash are pretty good.
Yep.
Season 3 is when it starts to like wane a little bit, and then it starts to like plummet after that. They always start well.
It's true though. Even Gotham, I remember being like, the first couple episodes are
not
fun.
Bad. I love this Penguin.
And then and still the Penguin's probably the best part, and Riddler too. Like probably the best parts of that show. But,
oh well,
it's a mess, and it's like, and I hope now we live in a world where we get HBO Peacemaker, where we're literally getting, instead of just like offshoot superhero stories, or where they're like trying to make the superhero story happen, let's just do it.
Let's just fucking do it. I'm glad and I'm optimistic that Green Lantern core show that they want to make is going to be on HBO Max.
Yes, and that we're getting a Penguin show that on HBO. I think that's actually super interesting, because if the Batman does well and then you have basically a hit like Peacemaker is right now, that's huge.
Yeah, you can use that as just like, here's stuff to tide you over to like build the universe out a little bit while you're waiting for the actual sequel.
Yeah, I'm excited for Peacemaker. I'm excited to watch that myself.
I've been watching it already.
Yeah,
it's very good. Behind. It's funny as hell.
But really, it's funny because I feel like it's like the thing about Superman and Lois is that they're able to do Superman just like in a story, instead of like Supergirl, where they were like, not Superman. Let's never do Superman. Let's fucking not bring him in, like.
Oh, but we'll steal all his shit.
And then they did, yeah. And then they were like, he's my cousin, and he shows up sometimes, and like, and then they eventually were like, he's here all the time,
And let's make a bunch of jokes at Superman's expense just because we did Supergirl first.
Yeah,
I don't like that.
It's.
But I also like. And I've always said it before, like, I'm not the biggest fan of Supergirl. It's weird. I just want Superman to be, for the most part, the only Kryptonian. It's ironic because Batman. It's ironic because
I love Supergirl. I don't like the show.
It's ironic because Batman's the loner character, and I like all his like offshoots, like the Robins and Batgirl and stuff. I don't mind that. But Superman, who doesn't necessarily have to be the loner, has extensions to his family.
Hold on, because this has to be important. Because you're shitting on Supergirl, but you're not shitting on Power Girl. Because I know you have a soft spot for Power Girl.
Power Girl's my favorite, but that's different. She's better.
It's true though, is that like she's not exactly the same universe, Supergirl, so she's different. She's not exactly that Krypton, I do like when they changed it to she was in a different universe instead of being like, it's Supergirl but powered up, like you're just like, wait, let's keep them different universes. That's fun.
They're different.
They're different.
Did you dare compare Supergirl to Power Girl?
But I like Supergirl. I like Supergirl for what it is.
It's not that I actively dislike her. It's just one of those things where like I don't need it.
Yeah, you're not driven to like,
I don't need it. It's weird. I have this weird thing about Superman spinoff characters specifically in a way that I don't for Batman, which is weirder because you would think Batman would be the loner who wouldn't have like sidekicks and stuff. But I like those characters.
Both of them fall into the same problem with spinning off. Is that in the Supergirl show, all she fights is Superman villains.
Yeah. And
all Batman spinoff people fight is Batman villains. It's like Nightwing, some of his best stories are him fighting Joker, Penguin, like Harley. It's like, it's all these things where it's like connected. And of course, that's why they're a great story, is like, oh, look, the Batman villain's here and how Nightwing would deal with it, how Supergirl would deal with it. Like that's like the fun of it. But it's also one of those things that these offshoot characters literally don't have villains. They don't have a rogue.
Yeah, that's always a problem. And I think another thing is that because Batman's so street level, it like makes sense that he might need help. Whereas like, we kind of really get away from the last son of Krypton thing when he has like, we have like 10 other Kryptonians running around.
It's true though. But if they can be birthed in little tubes, it's not really that far-fetched. There would be a lot more.
It's not canon anymore, Frank. Until we make a canon again. Yeah, and who knows?
Who knows? That's the thing is that like I like Supergirl, but she's like you said, she's only fighting, and that whole show is just like only fighting Superman characters, and she never gets to flourish with her own villains, her own things. You know, like I think Nightwing's taking some steps in the right direction with like Agent 52. Is that what he was called?
Just Grayson.
Agent. Yeah, or Grayson.
Yeah, that's that, but that hasn't been a thing in a while. But I've heard
still
that
great.
Tom Taylor's writing like Nightwing run. I've heard it's great.
I hear it's great. I hear it's good. And it's one of those things where he gets to fight his own villains because they create his own villains, and you're like, good job.
I'm glad that they brought back the black and blue, and they're just like, nope, the red never happened.
The red never fucking happened.
I got used to the red, but it's just one of those things where like everyone in the Bat family was red. And it was weird.
Yeah, you're like I knew what you were saying. You were trying to like unify them all, but Nightwing was supposed to be different. That's why he was wearing blue.
Yeah.
You know, like he was trying to be like, you don't have to lose all hope when you see me immediately. You know, like I am not a scary person. You know, like that's what he's always been. You know, like it's like I'm not a scary person.
But
like,
regardless, we're starting to talk about other stuff.
Yeah, starting to talk about other things. But I think it's important to talk about the offshoots of Superman too. You know, like of course. But guys, thank you for tuning into this episode. Please check out the other comic book episodes we have done.
We have a general one that covers both Marvel and DC, as well as like other stuff that's like non-superhero related, which is nice. And then we have we've been doing these more character focused ones. So we did a Batman one before and Superman one now. Yes. Who knows what the next one?
Who knows? Maybe Spider-Man. Maybe that'll be a more complicated.
Spider-Man would be tough because it would mostly have to lean on you. Same thing with like if we did an X-Men, it would mostly just be me being like you. The X-Men,
and I'd be like.
Sure.
Yes. Grant Morrison.
I concur. I think.
Chris Claremont. Good. Yeah. You know, like, that's probably my feelings on most X-Men runs. Yeah. I'm like, thumbs up. I'm like, good things. You know,
I'm sure you guys are having fun.
I'm sure you're having a good time. But guys, if you have a character you do want us to do, I mean, we could do a Flash episode. I feel like Flash is very set. Flash is very like doom, 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 doom. This is the best Flash stories, you know, like, and I don't own all of them. Like we got to do the fun of Batman.
Yeah, so we won't be able to like show them off on camera.
But there is a lot of fun to be had with talking about those. So guys, please comment down below suggestions for that type of stuff. If you guys want a character that's covered, I would absolutely do Green Lantern, but it would just be John's run. I'd be like, you just got to read John's run. You got. So it's not even an episode.
I wouldn't expect a Green Lantern.
It would be a 10-minute episode of us just being like,
the Jeff Johns run.
Johns run.
There you go. You did it. You read the Green Lantern.
You fucking did it, guys.
You completed it.
You could read the old Green Lantern, but you don't have to.
Well, I'm sure some like Emerald Knight stuff would be hilarious.
Yeah, right.
Just some.
I do love him. I do love that face so much. But guys, please support the show. We're on YouTube. You're watching us on the Galaxy of Geek YouTube page right now. If you're watching us, if you're just listening to us, we're on every podcast platform, and that's imaginable. Please, I mean it. We're on every single one. And guys, make sure to check out the social medias. There's a Facebook page for Galaxy of Geek and the Warp Shelf. And make sure to check out galaxyofgeek.com for every episode of this podcast. If you were like, where's all my episodes now? Go to galaxyofgeek.com. It's all fucking there.
We just moved
YouTube pages, but it's all there. It's all still there, and we're still posting it on Galaxy of Geek.
Yeah, and that's specifically for the videos.
Yes, specifically for the videos. Now, guys, be sure to check out. We got a Discord. We got, but personals. We have Twitter and Instagrams that are personal. I'm Yep Frank on there.
Mod Karika.
And I also have Yep Gundam, which is my fucking Gundam Instagram, which is, check it out if you like Gundam. Basically, I think the only thing I didn't say is Superboy rules. I don't think we ever said that about this whole read-through. Superboy fucking rules.
You know what? Not to extend this conversation further, but Superboy is one of those ones that I grew on. Young Justice really helped.
Yes,
like Young Justice was the thing that like really helped me like Superboy.
It's true. Yeah. It's like but I've always loved basically the Metropolis kid, the fucking like the leather jacket Superboy.
Single like studded earring.
I fucking
we're gonna get into a whole rant.
Well, fucking love that. But it's not how you get. That's the thing. It's Death of Superman stuff, and it's very like it's deep. It's not even like learn about Superman. Death of Superman and Return of Superman is very like. Have you read Superman comics?
It's not how you.
No,
introduce
it's not how you introduce it. But anyways, besides the point, thank you guys for listening to this episode. Thanks for getting into comics with us. And I hope to see you guys next week. Adios.